I've been observing lately that troubles me deeply. I see people everywhere, brilliant people, gifted people, people with extraordinary potential, living as shadows of who they were meant to become. They wake up every morning with grand intentions. They make promises to themselves at night. They swear that tomorrow will be different. But when tomorrow comes, they are still the same person, making the same excuses, living the same limited life. And here's what breaks my heart. It's not that they don't want to change. It's not that they don't have the capacity. It's that somewhere between the vision and the manifestation, between the dream and the reality, they allow distractions to steal their destiny. Let me tell you something that will shake you. The person you are today is not an accident. You are the sum total of your decisions, your disciplines, and your distractions. Every single choice you've made over the last 5 years has culminated in this present moment. And if you're honest with yourself, truly honest, you will admit that the gap between where you are and where you promised yourself you would be is filled with distractions. You entertained, disciplines you abandoned, and decisions you postponed. But I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to wake you up. There was a young man I knew who had everything going for him. Sharp mind, incredible work ethic in his earlier years, surrounded by people who believed in him. He had mapped out his entire future. By the age of 22, he was going to build a business. He was going to impact his community. He was going to become someone his family could be proud of. Everyone who knew him had no doubt he would succeed. 10 years later, I met him again. He was working a job he hated, living in a small room, complaining about how life had dealt him an unfair hand. When I asked him what happened to all those dreams, you know what he told me? He said life happened. But as we talked deeper, the truth emerged. It wasn't life that happened. It was choices, small choices, daily compromises. Every morning, he chose comfort over discipline. Every evening, he chose entertainment over education. Every weekend, he chose temporary pleasure over permanent progress. He didn't fail because he lacked potential. He failed because he lacked the ability to lock in and shut out the noise. See, the enemy of your greatness is not always some external force trying to destroy you. Sometimes it's you. It's your phone that you can't put down. It's your bed that you can't get out of. It's your comfort zone that you refuse to leave. It's the small voices in your head that whisper, you can start tomorrow. What's one more day? You deserve a break. But here's the reality that nobody wants to tell you. There are no small compromises. Every time you choose distraction over focus, you're not just losing time, you're reshaping your character. You're training yourself to be weak. You're programming your mind to accept mediocrity. You're becoming someone you never intended to be. And the most dangerous part, you don't see it happening. It's gradual, it's subtle. You wake up one day 5 years older and you realize you're still in the same place, still talking about what you're going to do, still making plans you never execute. Still that person who had potential but never developed it. I want you to understand something profound. The person you promised yourself you'd be is not going to emerge by accident. That version of you, the disciplined one, the focused one, the one who executes without excuses, that person has to be built deliberately, intentionally, through decisions that hurt in the moment but compound into transformation over time. There's a principle I've discovered that changed my entire approach to personal development. Is this: you cannot drift into discipline. You cannot accidentally develop character. You cannot stumble upon greatness. These things require a level of intentionality that most people are unwilling to embrace because it demands that you go to war with yourself. Let me share something with you. There was a period in my life when I realized I was living below my potential. I was doing okay, not failing, but not thriving either. I was comfortable, and that comfort had become my prison. I would wake up with intentions to pray, to study, to work on my purpose. But by midday, I'd find myself scrolling through my phone, watching videos that added no value to my life, engaging in conversations that drained my energy. One day, I had a moment of brutal honesty with myself. I asked, if I continue at this pace, where will I be in 5 years? And the answer terrified me. I saw myself older but not wiser, busier but not more productive, more experienced but not more effective. I realized that my current trajectory was leading me to a destination I didn't want to reach. That realization became my turning point. Not because someone motivated me. I had heard plenty of motivational speeches. Not because circumstances forced me. My life was actually quite comfortable. The shift happened because I finally understood that the person I was becoming was not the person I promised myself I'd be. So I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to lock in, not tomorrow, not next week, not when I felt ready. Right there, in that moment of clarity, I declared war on distraction. And let me tell you what happened. The first few days were brutal. My mind fought me. My body resisted. Every part of my old self screamed for me to go back to comfort. I would sit down to study, and my phone would call to me like a siren. I would wake up early to pray, and my bed would feel like the most comfortable place in the universe. I would start working on my goals, and 1,000 legitimate sounding excuses would flood my mind. But I had learned something crucial. Discipline is not about feelings. It's about honoring the commitment you made to yourself, even when, especially when you don't feel like it. It's about understanding that the person you are building is more important than the pleasure you are postponing. Here's what most people don't realize about distractions. They are not just stealing your time. They are stealing your identity. Every time you engage with something that doesn't align with who you're trying to become, you're reinforcing an old version of yourself. You're strengthening neural pathways that keep you stuck. You're voting for the person you used to be instead of the person you're trying to become. Think about it this way. If you're trying to become a disciplined person but you keep hitting the snooze button, you're not just losing an hour of sleep. You're training yourself to break promises to yourself. If you are trying to become a focused person but you keep checking your phone every 5 minutes, you're not just interrupting your work, you're programming your brain for distraction. If you're trying to become a healthy person but you keep choosing comfort food over nutritious meals, you're not just affecting your body, you're reinforcing an identity of someone who prioritizes temporary pleasure over long-term well-being. Your actions are not isolated incidents. They are votes for the type of person you're becoming. And right now, if you look at your daily habits honestly, who are you voting for? The disciplined version or the distracted version? The focused version or the scattered version? The person you promised you'd be or the person you've settled for being? I want to share with you the story of a woman who understood this principle at a level most people never reach. She was born into poverty, raised in an environment where success seemed impossible. Everyone around her was stuck in cycles of limitation, mediocrity, and excuses. But she had a vision of a different life. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to thrive. She didn't just want to get by, she wanted to build something significant. But here's what made her different. She understood that wanting is not enough. She knew that to build the person she envisioned, she would have to make decisions that nobody around her was making. She would have to say no to things that everyone else was saying yes to. She would have to embrace discipline in an environment that celebrated comfort. Every morning, while others were sleeping in, she was up studying. While others were socializing and entertaining themselves, she was working on her skills. While others were complaining about their circumstances, she was creating opportunities. People called her obsessed. They said she was missing out on life. They told her she needed to relax, to enjoy herself, to stop being so serious. But she had a clarity that most people never develop. She understood that the price of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. She knew that the temporary discomfort of saying no to distractions was nothing compared to the permanent disappointment of becoming someone she didn't respect. 20 years later, that woman had built a life that seemed impossible based on where she started. She had educated herself to levels that exceeded many who had far more advantages. She had built businesses that provided for her family and employed others. She had become a source of inspiration in her community. But here's what's most important. She had become the person she promised herself she'd be. When people asked her how she did it, she would always say the same thing: I locked in. I eliminated every distraction that didn't serve my vision. I built myself one day at a time, one decision at a time, one discipline at a time. See, that's the secret nobody wants to hear because it's not glamorous. There's no hack. There's no shortcut. There's no magic formula that bypasses the work. The person you want to become is on the other side of disciplines you need to embrace and distractions you need to eliminate. And here's where most people get confused. They think that locking in means you become this rigid, joyless person who never has fun, never relaxes, never enjoys life. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about intentionality. I'm talking about being so clear on your vision that you can discern what serves it and what sabotages it. Entertainment is not the enemy. Rest is not the enemy. Relationships are not the enemy. The enemy is mindless engagement with things that pull you away from your purpose. The enemy is unconscious consumption of content that shapes your thinking without your permission. The enemy is saying yes to everything and everyone because you lack the courage to protect your focus. When you truly lock in, you develop what I call sacred focus. You become someone who guards their time like a treasure because you understand that time is the currency of transformation. You become someone who protects their attention like a fortress because you realize that wherever your attention goes, your life follows. You become someone who carefully curates their environment, their relationships, their inputs, because you know that you cannot build an extraordinary life while surrounded by ordinary influences. Let me tell you what happens when you make this shift. At first, people around you won't understand. They'll think you've changed and they're right, you have. They'll feel offended that you're not as available as you used to be. They'll question your new boundaries. They'll try to pull you back into old patterns because your transformation makes them uncomfortable about their own stagnation. But something powerful happens as you continue. You start to see results. Small at first, then undeniable. Your mind becomes sharper because you are no longer clouding it with junk content. Your energy increases because you're investing it in things that matter rather than squandering it on things that don't. Your confidence grows because you're finally keeping the promises you make to yourself. And then something even more profound occurs. You begin to attract different people, focused people, disciplined people, people who are also building the person they promised themselves they will be. Your circle changes not because you abandon people, but because you elevated your standards, and naturally you began to resonate with those who share your commitment to growth. I remember meeting an older gentleman at a conference several years ago. He was in his 70s, but there was something about him, a sharpness, a vitality, an alertness that you rarely see even in people half his age. During a break, I approached him and asked what I thought was a simple question. Sir, what's your secret? How have you maintained such clarity and purpose at your age? He smiled, and what he told me next has stayed with me ever since. He said, young man, I'll tell you something that took me 40 years to learn. Most people don't lose their task sharpness because they get old. They lose it because they stop building. They reach a certain point in life. Maybe they get married, have children, secure a decent job, and they put themselves on autopilot. They stop reading books that challenge them. They stop having conversations that stretch them. They stop taking on projects that scare them. They essentially stop constructing the person they are becoming, and when you stop building, you start deteriorating. He continued, every single day, I ask myself one question: am I building or am I coasting? And whenever I catch myself coasting, I course correct immediately. That's why at 73, I'm learning new languages, starting new projects, mentoring young people, and pushing myself into uncomfortable territories. Not because I have to, but because I refuse to become a finished product while I'm still breathing. That conversation revolutionized my understanding of personal development. You see, most people treat growth like it's a destination. They think once I achieve this degree, I'm done. Once I reach this position, I've arrived. Once I make this amount of money, I can relax. But the person you promise yourself you'll be is not a destination, it's a direction. It's a continuous process of construction that doesn't end until your last breath. And this is where the concept of no distractions becomes absolutely critical, because the distractions that derail your progress aren't always bad things. Sometimes there are good things that aren't the best things. Sometimes there are opportunities that look attractive but don't align with your ultimate vision. Sometimes there are relationships that feel comfortable but keep you stagnant. I knew a talented young musician who had spent years mastering his craft. He had a gift that was undeniable, and everyone who heard him play knew he was destined for something significant. He had a clear vision. He wanted to create music that would impact millions, that would carry meaning beyond just entertainment. But then something happened. He started getting small gigs that paid decent money. Nothing spectacular, just enough to make him comfortable. Club performances here, background music for events there, session work that brought in steady income, and slowly, without even realizing it, he drifted from his original vision. 5 years passed, then 10. He was busy playing 4 or 5 nights a week, but he wasn't building toward his dream anymore. He was trapped in what I call the comfortable distraction. One evening, after a particularly uninspiring performance at a corporate event, he had a moment of devastating clarity. He was playing background music while business people ate dinner and barely noticed he existed. And he realized this wasn't what he promised himself. He had traded his vision for comfort. He had exchanged his calling for convenience. He was busy, but he wasn't building. That night, he made one of the hardest decisions of his life. He quit most of those gigs. He went back to being broke. He cleared his schedule of everything that didn't align with creating the music he was meant to create. His friends thought he was crazy. His family worried about him, but he understood something crucial. You cannot build the person you promise yourself you'll be while remaining loyal to the person you've become out of convenience. It took him 3 years of intense focus, 3 years of saying no to money he needed, 3 years of working jobs during the day so he could create his art at night. But eventually, he produced work that was so authentic, so powerful, so aligned with his original vision that it couldn't be ignored. Today, his music reaches millions, exactly as he envisioned, but it only happened because he had the courage to eliminate the comfortable distractions. Here's a truth that will make you uncomfortable. Your current life is perfectly designed to give you the results you're currently getting. If you're not where you want to be, it's not because of bad luck or wrong timing or other people. It's because the structure of your daily life, your habits, your relationships, your priorities, your disciplines is producing your current reality. And if you want a different reality, you need a different structure. You need to redesign your life around the person you're trying to become, not around the person you currently are. This means you might have to wake up when you don't want to, walk when others are playing, study when others are scrolling, invest when others are spending, build when others are consuming. The principle is simple but brutal. Extraordinary results require extraordinary discipline. And extraordinary discipline means doing what's necessary especially when everything in you wants to do something else. Let me share something vulnerable with you. There have been seasons in my life when I've had to make decisions that isolated me. Periods where I had to turn down invitations, decline opportunities, distance myself from people I cared about, not because they were bad, but because I was in a building season and I couldn't afford the distraction. I remember one particular phase when I was working on developing a specific skill set. I knew that if I could master this area, it would open doors that could never be opened otherwise. But mastery doesn't happen casually. It requires obsessive focus. So for 18 months, I essentially disappeared from social life. I stopped attending gatherings. I minimized my social media presence. I restructured my entire day around this one pursuit. People felt abandoned. Some got offended. Others spread rumors that I thought I was too good for them now. And I wouldn't lie to you, it was painful. There were moments when I questioned whether it was worth it. Moments when loneliness felt suffocating. Moments when I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake, but something kept me anchored. The image of the person I promised myself I'd become. Every time I wanted to give up, every time the isolation felt unbearable, I would close my eyes and see that version of me. Not the current me, struggling and uncertain, but the future me who had done the work, who had paid the price, who had become the person capable of carrying the assignment I was called to carry. And you know what? When I emerged from that season, everything was different. The skill I developed opened doors I couldn't have imagined. The discipline I built in that isolation became the foundation for everything I've accomplished since. The character I forged in those lonely hours gave me the strength to handle opportunities that would have crushed the old version of me. But here's what I learned that I needed to understand. The building process is not glamorous. Social media shows you the highlight reel, the victories, the breakthroughs, the celebrations. But nobody posts about the 4 a.m. mornings when you are exhausted, but you get up anyway. Nobody shares the moments when you're studying while your friends are partying and you feel like you're missing out on life. Nobody documents the countless times you failed privately before you succeed publicly. The person you promise yourself you'll be is forged in those hidden moments, in the decisions nobody sees, in the disciplines nobody applauds, in the sacrifices nobody acknowledges. That's where transformation actually happens. Not on the stage, not in the spotlight, but in the secret place of commitment when it's just you and your promise to yourself. Now, I need to address something that holds many people back. The fear that if you lock in completely, if you eliminate all distractions, you somehow lose yourself. You become this mechanical, robotic person without personality or joy. But that's a lie designed to keep you comfortable in your current state. The truth is the exact opposite. When you lock in and build the person you promise yourself you'll be, you don't lose yourself, you find yourself. You discover capacities you didn't know you had. You tap into strengths that were dormant. You become more fully yourself than you've ever been because you're finally living aligned with your purpose rather than scattered by distractions. Think about a river. When water flows in every direction, it creates a swamp, stagnant, muddy, unproductive. But when that same water is focused, channeled, directed with precision, it becomes a powerful force that can carve through mountains and generate energy for entire cities. You are that water. Right now, you might be a swamp flowing everywhere and nowhere, but you have the potential to become a river-focused, powerful, unstoppable. There's a young entrepreneur I mentored who started with nothing but an idea and an unshakable commitment. She came from a background where business ownership was unheard of. No one in her family had ever built anything. She had no capital, no connections, no credentials. But she had something more valuable. She had decided who she was going to become, and she refused to let anything distract her from that identity. For 3 years, she worked a full-time job she despised. But instead of complaining, she used every spare moment to build. Lunch breaks became learning sessions. Commutes became audiobook universities. Weekends became workshop laboratories. While others watched television series, she watched tutorials. While others scrolled social media, she studied successful business models. While others spent money on entertainment, she invested in courses and books. Her co-workers mocked her. They called her obsessed. They said she was wasting her youth. But she had a clarity that made her immune to their opinions. She knew that the pain of discipline was temporary, but the pain of regret lasts forever. Today, that business she built not only freed her from that job she hated, but now employs 17 people. Families are fed because she refused to be distracted. Dreams are being realized because she locked in. But none of that would exist if she had listened to the voices telling her to relax, to enjoy life, to stop being so serious. Here's what I need you to hear. The world does not reward potential, it rewards performance. And performance is potential that has been disciplined, focused, and executed. You can have all the talent in the world, all the opportunities, all the advantages, but if you cannot manage your attention and eliminate distractions, you will never build the person you promise yourself you'll be. So let me ask you directly, what are your distractions? What are the things that pull you away from your purpose? Maybe it's your phone, the endless scrolling that steals hours you can never recover. Maybe it's toxic relationships, people who drain your energy without adding value to your vision. Maybe it's entertainment, not recreation, that refreshes you, but consumption that numbs you. Maybe it's comfort, the enemy of growth, disguised as self-care. Whatever your distractions are, you know them. You know exactly what's keeping you from becoming who you promised yourself you'd be. And today, right now, you have a choice. You can acknowledge them and go to war with them, or you can continue making peace with them and wondering why your life never changes. The person you're going to be 5 years from now is being determined by the decisions you're making today, not the decisions you're planning to make, not the decisions you wish you would make. The actual decisions you're making right now, what you're doing with your time, what you're feeding your mind, what you're allowing to occupy your attention. And if you're honest, truly honest, you already know whether those decisions are building the person you promised yourself you'll be or keeping you stuck as the person you've settled for being. But here's the beautiful truth that gives me hope. It's not too late. I don't care how many years you've wasted. I don't care how many false starts you've had. I don't care how many times you've promised yourself you'd change and then fell back into old patterns. Right now, in this moment, you can decide, you can lock in, you can eliminate distractions, you can start building. The person you promised yourself you'd be is still possible. But that person will not emerge from wishful thinking or good intentions or perfect conditions. That person will only emerge from a declaration of war against everything that opposes your transformation. So I'm challenging you today. Make a decision, not a wish, not a hope, not a maybe I'll try, a decision. Decide that from this moment forward, you're done being scattered. You're done being distracted. You're done living below the level of your calling. Decide that you're going to lock in with a level of intensity that makes people uncomfortable. Decide that you're going to build the person you promised yourself you'd be, regardless of how long it takes, regardless of what it costs, regardless of who understands. Because at the end of your life, only one opinion will matter, yours. And the only question that will determine whether you feel fulfilled or full of regret is this: did you become the person you promised yourself you would be? The answer to that question is being written right now in this very moment by the choices you're making. So choose wisely, choose courageously, choose with the end in mind, lock in, eliminate every distraction, and build with everything you have the person you promised yourself you would be.